Hello, everyone. Welcome to the best and worst of Walt Disney World. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the best and worst of on-property transportation. And I am your host, Rhino Clavin, and joining me for this discussion, Mr. Charles Boda.
Hey.
And Mr. Craig Williams.
I jumped the gun on that Charles one.
Yeah,
You did. You just had to sit there awkwardly for a little bit if you were watching this, if you're listening.
It felt like it was coming.
So what we're going to do for this episode, like I said, we're going to talk about on-property transportation, but we thought it would be a little easier to discuss if we kind of did it the way we did our Toy Story Land discussion, which is we're going to throw out one of the modes of transportation and just kind of say how we feel it falls into the best or the worst or just kind of the meh category. So we're just going to get right in there, and I want to talk about well, the whole inspiration for this was the fact that we are about to get a brand new transportation system, which is that the gondola system, which is called the Skyliner.
Disney Skyliner.
Disney Skyliner. Okay, I'm sorry.
everybody instinctively says Skyway for some reason.
Yeah, I don't. The highway in the sky.
Yeah.
So I always think.
Well, that's the monorail.
That's the monorail,
Skyway,
yeah.
The Skyway is
The other
buckets.
highway in the sky. The other white meat. Baby. So anyway, so I thought we could just kind of talk about that a little bit, and we could start with the other newer transportation system, which is the Minnie Van service. So I have experienced this. Craig has experienced this. Have you had the chance to be in a Minnie Van, Charles?
I actually have not.
You have not. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're familiar with
I've
how
been
it works.
in a
and stuff.
lift.
Yeah. Have
and-
you?
Yes, and I'm pretty well to do. I've been in a lift before, so it works generally the same way, right?
So for those of you who aren't familiar, the Minnie Van service, the Minnie Van service is run by Lyft, and so basically, if you are anywhere on Disney property and you open up your Lyft app, it'll be one of the options in that, in the window. You can pick various Lyft options, one of those being the Minnie Van. Like I said, for $25, it'll take you anywhere on Disney property. So you can take it from Disney Springs to a resort for dinner, or who cares? I don't know where you're going to go. But just the farthest point to the farthest point is what I would recommend to get you full money's worth out of it. But they can take you off property, but they cannot pick you up from off property. So if you want to take a Minnie Van from your resort to the airport, you can. It is more than $25 and like a lot more. So maybe not the best option. However, the Minnie Vans, when Craig and I experienced it, because we were in one together, you get in, and our driver essentially was like, "What music do you want to listen to?" And you can be like, "Star Wars music, Pixar music. I want to listen to this theme park music, all that sort of stuff." They are all the larger sized vehicles as well. So I believe they seat up to 6 or 2, 4, 6. Yeah, I want to say it's 6. 3 in the back, 2 in the middle, 1 in the front.
I think if memory serves, they have space for like 2 child seats in there as well.
They do. In fact, Craig was saying that they come with car seats as well. So they do. Yes, that's good service. And they have ones that can also accommodate guests with traveling with wheelchairs as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So all that is kind of addressed in the app when you're calling for the service as well. So just make sure you're kind of when you run through it, it'll run you through that. But they come with like charging cables for any sort of phone you got there, so you can charge it for the no longer than 10 minutes you'll probably be in this vehicle and stuff. But the driver's very nice, was very knowledgeable. The ride was pleasant. The car's very like clean and new and all this, and so I enjoyed it. We have a friend, Ashley, who's obsessed with them and like finds excuses to use them. So she's definitely she feels like it's in the best of Disney transportation. And I will agree. I do think it's fun to come and get a personalized, a themed, trip, because it's cute. It's a car with all the polka dots on it and everything. And it's fun. My only thing is, like, you have other modes of transportation that are free. Mm-hmm. They're probably not going to get you to where you're going as fast as the Minnie Van service can. But I've had a pleasant experience. Craig, what do you think of this service?
It's if you have the means. Mm-hmm. Use it. If you can justify spending $50. I had to do math on what 25 times 2 is. If you can justify it, that's just saying you're going somewhere for a round trip. If you're going multiple stops throughout the day, it's going to add up a lot faster. But if you have the means to do it, and you feel comfortable spending that money, go ahead. It's actually a very well-run service. The cast members are extra friendly, and it's a great way to get from point A to point B. For me, I don't have that kind of flexible money where I could spend it going $25 a ride, when a lot of times you can get on Uber or Lyft and you can get a ride for under $10
Yeah.
for the same locations. Granted, that's where you're not getting your car seats. You aren't guaranteed an accessible vehicle, but at the same time, I currently don't need that. So for me, that works. If I was a family of 4, 5, 6 with kids that are car seat age, I could absolutely see the value in using this.
And another perk of this too is it drops you like right at the entrance. So let's say you want to go to, and I think this is like one of the ultimate perks, is if you want to go to the Magic Kingdom, it essentially is dropping you where the buses drop you off. So you're like as close as you can get by any vehicle. It'll get you there. So that is a little bit of an extra, whereas the Lyft cannot drop you in that same spot. It drops you at the TTC, I want to say, and you still have to take the other modes of transportation. So yeah, it's a pretty cool service.
Yeah, I always wonder about their hiring practices for minivan as opposed to regular Lyft.
I asked about it.
Because, like, Lyft is hit or miss, and if I want to go from the Contemporary to here at the right time for a Lyft, it can cost me like $22, and it is much farther to here than between resorts. So price-wise, but Lyft is still hit or miss. Like, there's half the time there's somebody like thumping bass right behind my head, and I'm like, they have sketchy driving proficiency, and so I'm assuming that they hire they're a little more strict about their policies when they hire their minivan drivers.
The two cast members that we dealt with were I asked about where they came from and stuff like that, and they were from other lines of business that had transferred into this. There was essentially like a call for drivers, and they go through a whole process, a training process. They're very knowledgeable about property, so you are getting that experience as well if you have questions and things like that. To do with it. And there was another thing I was going to say about it.
I will say,
slipped my mind.
The last time I got a ride on Uber to take me from Hollywood Studios, I don't remember where, but they informed us that, and it might have been on the way to Hollywood Studios, I just genuinely don't remember, but they did inform us that they were an Uber driver that just drives on property all of the time, and they also drive for Lyft too. So apparently, and he could be blowing smoke up my you-know-where, but he said that he had Disney reach out to him on behalf of Lyft because they saw how many of his rides actually happen on property. And so they were looking for new cast members that they could hire from the outside that were already very familiar with property, besides just having internal cast members transfer into the service. So I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe he was just trying to make conversation and sound like he would. For him, he had another job, so it would have been a downgrade for him as something on the side to them being in a scheduled position. But he did say that Disney has been headhunting rideshare services for people who do know property. So I don't know if that's true or not again, but maybe.
Well, what I consider minivan service to be almost like the limos of Disney, because when we took it that night, we were going to our dinner with a friend at the Brown Derby, and so it was already like, oh, fancy! I'd never been there before, and so like the minivan lift, it added to that for me. Like, so that's why I have this very nice, like, it was a fun experience that was rolled into a fun night. So so I think it is a nice treat, even if you're not going to use it all the time. Maybe might be something fun for somebody's like birthday or anniversary dinner or something like that. But we'll move on to the other incredibly popular mode of transportation, which are the Disney buses that you can get to take you pretty much from resort to resort, park to park, so on and so forth. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna put this in the best, essentially, because this is the infrastructure of how we get around down here. I mean, you have a hopper pass, and adding like this bus service is just one of the ways that you can. This free bus service, first of all, we'll say there are days where the buses are. I believe the rule of thumb was that it's supposed to be 15 to 20 minutes in between buses. Doesn't always feel like the case. But it's a free transportation service that if you are staying on property, it does take away the headache sometimes of having to like rent a car, that kind of stress of being like driving around. You don't know where you're going, what you're doing. And, I know you talk about immersion and stuff like that all the time. And, when you step into Walt Disney World, it's one of those things where I feel like this is one of the abilities you have to kind of let go of the outside world, so you don't have to worry about your car, don't have to worry about where you parked, don't have to worry about pulling out the GPS, figuring out where you're going. Like it does take that ease off a little bit. So I still do remember my first experience coming down and staying at an actual Disney resort and being like, wow, just like blown away by the ability not to have a car, because when I was a kid, we didn't stay on property and we always had that car around, and it, when you're trying to run through a Florida thunderstorm to get to your car, it can be very stressful. So for me, they're in the best area, but maybe not everybody feels so much. How do you feel about it?
Oh, no, easily best area. You want to talk about Main Street USA and stuff like that is like a idealized version of an American city. Like in Orlando locally, we have awful public transportation.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You go to Disney and you have idealized public transportation. It is still... there's still buses. There will be a crying
public
child.
Transportation.
It's not personal service, but the ease of use. Yeah, like you don't have to worry about getting on the wrong way and then going the wrong way and delaying yourself for hours or waiting for hours and hours or anything like that. It's free. It's very easy to use. Sometimes I use it. I don't have a car, and if I'm not with one of you guys, that's the way I get from resort to resort. And the first time I did it, I'm like, great, this is a new complication that I've now added.
Yeah.
And it was so simple, and I kind of enjoyed it. The service was really great, and I was surprised. Now I have absolutely no problem getting on those buses and riding around.
Well, there are, obviously there are some caveats to using the bus too. If you're here for resort hopping, it's not going to be easy to take a bus from resort to resort to resort. You kind of have to be strategic about it, like going from Disney Springs to a resort back to Disney Springs and whatnot. Craig?
For me, it really is balanced on both sides. I would ultimately place it in the worst of Disney transportation.
Really?
To the point, and this is where I'm going to kick myself, to the point where I say, when we hear from people, well, I don't want to rent a car. I think Disney bus transportation is so awful that it almost forces you into renting a car, unless you want to spend a lot of money on rideshare or spend a lot of money on a hotel being on one of the deluxe loop lines, whether it's the monorail loop at Magic Kingdom or being at the Boardwalk Yacht Beach Club area over at Epcot. So you have that in Hollywood Studios. But ultimately, it's always a mess. It's very rare that any of my resort stays, it's very rare that the bus system ever runs on a regular schedule. I know it seems like one of those issues where it's like it only happens to me, but yeah, every single time I'm there, I feel like every bus I'm waiting for never comes. But in the meantime, there's at least 3 or 4 buses that come for every other destination.
Yeah, 15 Typhoon Lagoon buses.
Yeah, and I can only be burnt by it so many times. The only asterisk I would put on why I do enjoy the bus transportation is even though I think you should rent a car and you can get around faster, it does keep people from renting cars, and I don't have to deal with tourists being lost and cutting me off at the last second to get off and exit, and almost cause an accident, which does happen very, very regularly. And then my other thing that I do like about it, as we've mentioned once with the Minnie Vans, it's easy to park at any of the theme parks, whether it's Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, or Epcot.
Yeah.
But Magic Kingdom is the biggest pain. So
especially if you're traveling with kids.
Yeah. So I think the bus is a great tool to get to the Magic Kingdom. But for the other parks, if you're on the fence about renting a car or not, I feel like you can make use of it. That being said, now that it costs to keep your car at your hotel, and there's the daily charges on that changes a lot.
Absolutely.
But again, like the Minnie Vans, if you have the means where you can justify paying parking at a hotel, I guess go for it. But ultimately, the bus system just It's such a pain.
It is frustrating because so you want to get up and take advantage of being in the park at rope drop. Well, you are going to now have to account for X amount of extra time that you are going to be waiting at the bus stop outside of your hotel because everybody else is the whole hotel is doing the same thing. And like Craig said, only so many buses, and so like, is that poor management on Disney's side of it? Are they like forcing people into I've always wondered that because I have had friends who have worked backstage in transportation and explained to me how the system works, and the whole idea is that essentially they're monitoring how many people are always waiting during the day and timing all that stuff, and it's supposed to be like, okay, we need to dispatch X amount of more buses over here to help relieve with this to go to this park, and it sounds great on a piece of paper, but is it ever very practically deployed? I don't know.
Here's what one of the things I'll say with that. Well, two things actually. First, Craig brought up like a good point with tourists coming down, not knowing where they're going, and the amount of traffic and everything. And even if you live here, construction changes those roads on a daily basis, and it's hard to get around. So for some people, not having the stress, if you rent a car, like you'll get places quicker, but it is going to be stressful. It's not fun, easy, relaxing driving around property. And then the other thing is, I think one of the things that colors this so much for me is that it is free. So I overlook a lot of the ways that it doesn't work because of everything is an upcharge. Now they are charging for parking, every single thing. So to have a free service that isn't completely useless, it surprises me.
It can be incredibly frustrating at times, especially when you think about it. It's like it's a double-edged sword, because you think about, okay, I'm carrying my kid on my shoulder, I'm leaving the Magic Kingdom after fireworks, and like you're pushing a stroller that you're gonna have to fold up or whatever, but then you can just get on a bus. That sounds great and bring you back to resort, but you're probably going to wait about 30 minutes to get on the bus because everybody's leaving at the same time is the other part of that.
That is the last aspect of it, is if you're trying to use the bus system during a busy time, you're in an ECV, you are going to wait a while.
Especially if you're in an ECV.
Yeah, they will load you on first, but if there's 5 ECVs piled up waiting to get on a bus, they can only handle so many. If you have a big stroller that you can't fold up that well, you are going to take up a lot of space. And I'm not saying don't bring that stroller. If you want to, that's fine, but you might then have to sacrifice and wait. So if you have the type of vehicle that can haul around an ECV or a larger stroller, at some points it might just be easier for you to use your own vehicles, and so that way you're not delaying your getting around by waiting on buses.
Well, on that side of that too, if it is not a super busy time of year and you are someone who's traveling with an ECV, one of the I find nice benefits is you just drive it right on the bus, and when you're done, you just drive it right off the bus. So it's a nice, like, you don't have to get out of it. You don't have to deal with like how to get it back on the, the back of your car or something like that, or however you transport it. But and then, like we said, with a bunch of kids, sometimes it's easier just to push them into that moving vehicle and into the moving vehicle, I said, and go, and go with them. But then having to like fight through a hot parking lot and thing. But that's our perspective of that.
Should we talk about the monorail and ferry boat getting to the Magic Kingdom, Rhino?
Absolutely. So for me, I'm going to say the ferry boat is on the best side of things. I feel like it's the experience personally, I go on the way out at the end of the night. I like it. I find it to be a little more, it's relaxing. I like being on the water, going out, like kind of saying goodbye to the park. You got that breeze going. And I don't know. That's just the routine I had when I was a kid. So, and then I put the monorail on the worst, essentially only because of the state that it's currently in. And it's breaking down every day. It's unreliable. It smells like pee. And I just feel like I want it to be what it is. I want it to be like loved the way it should be loved, But what do you think, Charles?
I think that, when we talk about transportation to and from the actual parks, that the transportation should play a part in your park experience, and the ferry boat accomplishes that, but it's a longer wait if you have time. But I've also found that it's less cluttered. There's a little more space to move around. The monorail should be a great experience. Absolutely. We all have this, futuristic view that we had on our first ride through and everything like that about how awesome the monorail is. The view is phenomenal, but it doesn't seem like Disney cares about it as much as we do. They've taken forever to update it. And so, yeah, it smells terrible. The various things you've mentioned. In its current state, the monorail is on my worst list. Hopefully that will change. But in its current state, the ferry boat, it's a longer wait. And it's not the quickest way, but I feel that it really sets the mood on the water with the wind and everything like that.
Yeah.
So that goes in my best. You know, it's not going to get you there quick, but we're talking about immersion here. And do you want to be immersed in a beautiful waterway entrance to the park, or do you want to be immersed in BO and plastic smell?
Yeah. What about you, Craig?
I would say I'm in the realm of I like the ferry boat. I would put that on my best. Monorail for me would be worse. Pretty much for the reasons you said. It's dirty, disgusting, and I feel like I'm always crammed in there. And while I'm not a prude about personal space, I also usually don't want the first thing I experience to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I would rather save that for other realms. With the ferry boat, I love it. I love taking it in the morning. It's a great peaceful way to start your day. I'm never feeling claustrophobic in there. It's like you've said, open air, breeze. At the end of the night, I usually want to get home very quickly. So I hate taking the ferry boat because it never feels like you can get anywhere quickly with the ferry boat, unlike the monorail, which can be quick. So it really comes down to sacrificing speed for comfort. Mm-hmm. And for me, I would kind of rank it as ferry boat first if I'm just looking for the comfortable. If I'm looking for speed, monorail, but never want to use it. And if I can cop out, I'll use the resort monorail, where usually it's not as packed in, but you do have the additional stops that add a little extra time to your journey. But
it's hard because, like, when I was a kid, the monorail was the thing that like kick-started the day. It was like, okay, we're going to that land of magic and fantasy and adventure, and my last several experiences, I don't even know how many to count, it really it creates a stressful environment and a stressful thing, especially I feel like you're traveling with like strollers or people with wheelchairs. It's like what you said, it gets crammed, or it's because of its unreliability, it just starts off the day in the wrong way sometimes.
But it is accessible for those who are in strollers and wheelchairs, and also just any ECV related.
They can drive right in.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Steve Porter brought up an interesting thing when we were at the parks one time, where you have this magical day at Disney, and then you finish off with the fireworks, and it's beautiful, and you're all pumped, you're all Disneyfied, and then you get to that line to the monorail, and then you get on the and everybody immediately starts acting like really anxious and kind of rude to each other, trying to get through it.
They want to go.
Yeah, and it is that's the quickest route, but it is also the most. Like you exit Disney Magic on that high, and then you get thrown into your last long, angry line of the night. So.
Yeah, it's tough. It's all, and again, it's all perspective. That's just our feelings on the matter of it all. Maybe someday they'll give the tender love and care to the monorails that it deserves. But there is another mode of transportation that we haven't discussed yet, which is the resort boats. And that is not just the ones that are at the Magic Kingdom Resort Loop in that area. There are also the friendship boats that can take you from Hollywood Studios to Epcot and vice versa. And then, of course, you have transportation from Key West that can bring you to Old Key West. I'm sorry, it's old. To like Disney Springs, or my favorite are the ferry boat that would take you from like the Magic Kingdom into one of the monorail resort loops. Like specifically for me, I put these on the best thing because ideally, if I'm lucky, I'll get parked in like the hero side, maybe like Simba in the morning, which has happened the last couple times, and I will just take the crosswalk over from the parking lot into the Polynesian, take the resort monorail like Craig recommended into the park because I parked right there, and then if depending on how long I'm in the park, I can take that resort boat out at night, get some cool pictures, if you hit it just right, but with like sunset and stuff, but I'll take the ferry boat over back to the Polynesian and maybe like stop at Trader Sam's because it like docks you right over there. And it's just something about like going in and all the tiki torches are lit and you just got off your boat and you step up there that it's just, it creates this kind of like really magical, intimate experience that I feel like, I think of these more as an attraction. Like you should just see it even if you're not staying in any of these things because it does offer like a different perspective. Do I wish they ran more of them? Yes. There's always two, usually one coming, one going, but I feel like they really need to like maybe have one more in there. But so for me, I put those in the best. What do you think?
Easily in the best. I think they're overlooked a lot of times because, you know, like functionality-wise, they're probably not going to be the first that pop into your head. I kind of think that they're like overlooked, but almost a must-do because they're the most fun to me.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to immersion and experience, being on the water, they're smaller. And there's a limited capacity, so you're waiting, but you're probably not going to be tightly packed in, too crowded or anything. You get a different perspective, you get views and camera angles that you normally couldn't get from anywhere else in the park. Being on the water, coming towards the Magic Kingdom, is a really special feeling on those smaller boats. And the thing is, it's just... It's fun, and I can't really say that about any other form of transportation right now
that's
to
a
the
good
same
point.
way.
Yeah.
A little bit with the ferry, but there are things that go into that. But these ones, I actually feel like, hey, I'm on a trip, I'm on an adventure, I'm going from here to here, and so it feels that's the Disney element to me. That's what really puts it home for me and my love of these things.
They're very accommodating in all sorts of ways. The boats that go between the hotels and the parks or hotels in Disney Springs, they all come in different shapes and sizes. So as Rhino mentioned, the ones that do the loop from Polynesian Grand Floridian, Magic Kingdom, those are on the smaller size, so they do zip around a lot quicker, but they hold a lot less people, so that can slow you down on things. The ones that go to like Wilderness Lodge and Fort Wilderness, those are usually a little bit bigger, so they can hold a lot more people. They're more accessible for people with big wheelchairs, ECVs, wheelchairs, etc. So I feel like those are a good benefit, a great thing to maximize and utilize when you're staying at either of those resorts. I think that the one going from all the Disney Springs resorts areas, so the Port Orleans resorts, Old Key West, Saratoga Springs, those are all a great way to get to Disney Springs from there. I will say, if you're staying at Saratoga Springs, just walk. It's right there, so it's probably quicker than waiting for a boat and then going over there. Unless you're by the Treehouse Villas, that's a different scenario. But regardless, it's still a more magical way to get from your resort to your final destination and that. So I highly recommend them. Ones that get a lot of praise that I don't particularly care for myself are the friendship boats that go from Epcot to Hollywood Studios back and forth, stops at Beach Club, Yacht Club, Boardwalk, Swan and Dolphin, all on the way. I feel like they're great in theory, and they're great for people who can't handle the walking or don't want to because of the heat, any other reasons. And for me, ultimately, the walk, I can do it in about 20 minutes because of my freakishly long legs. So for me, it's just faster to walk to my next destination from there. But for people who do need the boat, it's a great service. It's just know that you're going to stop everywhere. And at a minimum, you're looking at probably 30 minutes to go from Epcot all the way over to Hollywood Studios or back, and it could be even more. It could be 45 minutes, depending on how long the transfers take at all the hotels and such. So regardless, they are a great method of transportation, and I don't know about most people, but I had the chance to ride boats and other watercrafts when I was growing up at like Friends Lakes and things like that, but not in this sense. It wasn't like boating was a normal everyday thing. So I enjoy that is an attraction to me.
Well, some people don't even live near bodies of water.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of a interesting thought too, is that this is kind of it's a cool experience for that alone, for them. So it's also really interesting to really take those boats around because I find it really impressive when you think about that's a man-made, all those waterways are man-made pretty much. So, not Seven Seas Lagoon. What am I thinking of? Yeah. No, Bay Lake. Bay Lake was the man-made dugout. Took 3 years to make, kind of thing. It's just it's all really fascinating, and we're all about perspective here. It gives you a new perspective, is what I feel like. So that's how we feel about it. I think we kind of discussed all of the current on property transportation more or less for that, unless someone's taking a Surrey bike somewhere. But you have to bring those back, and boy, is that a nightmare too. But it's just too much.
I bring my own to the park.
You bring your own multifamily bike at any times.
Just me on it.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it. Thank you, gentlemen, for having this discussion with me. Thank you all for listening and watching. You can feel free to like or dislike this video, whatever you'd like. It'd be nicer if you liked it, but that's okay if you don't. Feel free to share it with a friend. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I would recommend it. If you want to see other types of videos from us as well, you can just subscribe, click the little bell for notifications when we have new stuff out there. If you want to see certain topics discussed on the show, please feel free to let us know on Twitter @TheDiz or on through the email podcast@DizUnplugged.com. And I think that is it. So until the next time, thank you all for watching the best and worst of Walt Disney World.